Good evening. It is 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020, and this is the regular City Council meeting for the City of Sandpoint. I now call this meeting to order. I'm Mayor Shelby Ronstadt, presiding in Council Chambers at City Hall at 1123 West Lake Street in Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, Council members Shannon Williamson, Deb Rule, Joel Aspiro, John Darling, Kate McAllister, and Andy Grote are present. Council members Aspiro, Darling, McAllister, and Grote are participating here in Chambers. Council members Williamson and Rule are participating remotely. We'll now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any announcements from council? None. Okay, great. Staff.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a few announcements tonight. First, under announcements, Judge Haynes from District Court issued his order and decision on the lawsuit brought against the city by Bonner County and Sheriff Darrell Wheeler regarding the festival and their policy prohibiting firearms at the festival. And for purposes of being accurate with what the court's decision was, I'll just read to council, if you will, what the conclusion was in the written decision. This court concludes that plaintiff has not established standing to bring the instant lawsuit. This court is aware of parallel litigation brought by individual citizens who were denied entry into the 2019 festival because of their demand to do so while having a firearm on their person. Whether these individuals have standing and the issue of mootness remains to be seen based on future possible motion practice in that lawsuit. Since plaintiff, in this case Bonner County and Sheriff Darrell Wheeler, has failed to establish standing by way of injury, in fact, or future injury, plaintiff's interest in the city's lease with the festival is reduced to the generalized interest of all citizens of constitutional governance. It is undisputed that such a generalized interest does not confer standing, and defendant's city's motion for summary judgment is granted. Plaintiff's motion for summary judgment is denied. Because this court has concluded that plaintiff lacks standing to bring this matter before the court, this court will not engage in an analysis of whether this issue has become moot. So that decision was issued this afternoon. City's attorney is moving forward with filing a motion with the court for repayment of our attorney's fees from the county. So we will have a hearing scheduled for the court probably on that issue in the next 4 to 6 weeks for the court to consider granting the city attorney's fees. There is an outstanding case that is still before the courts that was brought by Scott Herndon. Mr. Herndon has filed, who was denied access by the festival to the 2019 festival, and the court has scheduled a court hearing on that in February 24th of next year. So, but this at this time concludes the lawsuit between the city and the county on this issue. And again, the court ruled in the city's favor on the lawsuit. That's great. I want to thank, first of all, Lake City Law and Peter Lynn specifically for his hard work on this. And I want to thank city staff. I know that this took a lot of time and effort on your behalf in providing testimony and just following this thing through to the end. So thank you for putting in the hard work. And I also thank council for standing strong and, getting us to a positive conclusion here. So you have more that you want to? I do. Okay, I do have a few other announcements. My second really update to the community is around our osprey nest located down at War Memorial Field. We've received several citizen complaints, concerns that there are drones flying above War Memorial Field and they're disturbing the osprey in their nests. As a reminder to our residents and visitors, our Memorial Field is home to 2 active osprey nests, and ospreys are federally protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And it's actually a federal offense to disturb active nests, and a person can be held liable if any bird of prey is injured or killed. There's a lot of excitement about our gorgeous new field turf surface and the field itself and the opened up views really with the redesign of the field. But for those who want to capture images either during games, or there's a lot of images that have been floating out too when there's not a scheduled activity on the field, but capturing the beauty of the lake and looking out on our field, that they need to stay away from the osprey nests. So that is a concern. And for those who aren't aware of the osprey, but maybe tuning into our meeting, we do have the live osprey cam online. It's at ospreys.sandpointonline.com. So in the fall and the winter, that we don't have the osprey obviously in the nest, but at this time of year, we still, the parents and the young are still in the nest.
Could those drones be enlisted to deter geese at City Beach? They've got great views out there as well.
Perhaps that would be a better
There's no
use.
nests, right? So there's maybe room to explore that potentially.
Our third announcement is related to our sewer lateral replacement demonstration program, and I'll have Amanda give an update on that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening. I just wanted to provide council and the public with an update regarding our sewer lateral replacement program and project. As you'll recall, City Council weighed in on us proceeding with getting bids for the city to go about replacing a pilot program, replacing sewer laterals within a pilot program area within town, specifically primarily between Michigan on the north end, Ontario on the south, Erie on the west, and Florence on the east. That's the approximate location of the pilot program. We are on track. The team has progressed that effort really well, and we are on track to release a bid package for contractors to provide us pricing on that next week. In concert with that, we will be reaching out to all of the citizens and residents within that particular pilot program area with an informative packet, as well as a request for them providing authorization for us to do that work. So we're still on track to come back to you on October 7th and request hopefully the award of a construction contract to keep that rolling. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda. And there's no questions from council on that? Okay.
And finally, I have one last item, Mr. Mayor. We have a arts and culture survey that has been open for the last several weeks. We are in an arts and culture master planning process, and our consultants are actually currently preparing kind of a state of arts and culture in Sandpoint, which will be coming back to council for a presentation either later this month or early in October. And we have extended the deadline for the arts and culture survey 1 week. So you can access that off of our Facebook page, and we'll get the link posted up again tonight. You can access it off of our webpage as well. So summer gets away from us sometimes, and we haven't had the response on this survey that we've had on some of our others. So we extended a week to try to encourage people to give us that input because that'll be important to our master planning moving forward.
That's great. Thanks for that. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. So September is National Senior Center Month. And in recognition of that, I have a proclamation that I'd like to read. Whereas older Americans are significant members of our society, investing their wisdom and experience to help enrich and better the lives of younger generations. And whereas the Sandpoint Area Seniors Incorporated has acted as a catalyst for mobilizing the creativity, energy, vitality, and commitment of the older residents of Sandpoint and Bonner County. And whereas through a wide array of services, programs, and activities, the Sandpoint Senior Center empowers older adults to contribute to their own health and well-being and the well-being of their fellow citizens of all ages. And whereas the Sandpoint Senior Center in the city of Sandpoint, Idaho, affirms the dignity, self-worth, and independence of older persons by facilitating their decisions and actions. tapping their experiences, skills, and knowledge, and enabling their continued contributions to the community. And whereas the Sandpoint Senior Center provides opportunities for seniors to stay active and healthy, continue learning, share experiences, and stay connected with friends and community members. Now, therefore, in an effort to acknowledge the importance and the many contributions of the Sandpoint Area Seniors Incorporated, and call upon all citizens to recognize the special contributions of the Senior Center, participants, and the special efforts of the staff and volunteers who work every day to enhance the well-being of the older adults in our community. I, Shelby Ronstadt, Mayor of Sandpoint, Idaho, hereby proudly proclaim September in the City of Sandpoint as National Senior Center Month. Okay, moving on to the public forum. This gives the public the opportunity to address the council and mayor regarding items listed on the consent calendar or on any topic not listed on the agenda. To accommodate those who wish to speak on general items during public forum, as well as those who wish to speak on specific business items on our agenda, a total of 20 minutes will be dedicated to public forum at the beginning of the meeting. If you'd like to speak and did not have an opportunity to do so, we will give everyone an opportunity to speak by reopening the public forum at the end of our regular agenda. Those participating in the meeting will refrain from disruptive behavior, such as loud noises, clapping, shouting, or engaging in any other activity in a manner that disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of this meeting. Looks like we won't have too much of a problem out there today. Just keep it simmered down, Corey. Comments shall not be personally derogatory, nor shall they be personally directed at any individual, organization, or business. Do not direct any questions to the mayor, city council, or city staff during your comments, and do not address the audience, please. In the interest of time, please do not repeat prior comments, but simply state your support for those comments. Public participation is and will remain at the discretion of the mayor. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. Please keep an eye on our new fancy timer spotlight. Very proud of it. It will turn green when you have 1 minute left. It will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds left, and it will turn red when your 3 minutes are up. We will be taking comments from City of Sandpoint residents first, both those participating here in chambers and those attending by Zoom. Then we will hear from those who reside outside of our city limits. For those participating here in chambers, when your name is called, you will step up to the podium to speak. On Zoom, please note that you will need a working microphone on your phone or computer in order to participate. When your name is called, you will see a prompt on your screen to unmute. You will need to press or click the unmute button in order to be heard. We will now begin with the first 20 minutes of the public forum. And clerk, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
I do not have anyone signed up to speak, Mr. Mayor. If there's anyone participating by Zoom who would like to speak during public forum, if you could please click the raise your hand option.
And is there anyone in the audience here this evening that would like to speak at the public forum? Okay. No hands raised?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes the public forum portion of the meeting. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. For the record, the total amount of bills is $969,668.67 for regular payables. Are there any items council wishes to remove from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion that the consent calendar be approved.
So moved.
Or second.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Spurrow,
Yes.
Councilman Darling,
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilman Grote.
Yes.
Motion passes. Consent calendar is approved. The first item under old business this evening is the city's long-awaited Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This will be information only. No decision will be, no action will be taken by council this evening. City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton will introduce our consultant who will provide a presentation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to start out with just kind of some background and what our consultant is going to cover tonight, and then I'm going to hand it over to Kim to introduce Tom and kind of make some opening comments about this Parks and Recreation Master Plan. As the mayor noted, this is before council tonight for discussion, questions only. It will come back before council for adoption at your next council meeting. What Tom will be with Greenplay, our consultant who's been working on our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, what he will be presenting to council tonight is their final recommendations and action plan. We have had several presentations on components of the master plan over the last year, including the master plan background, the purpose of the plan, the history of the Parks and Recreation Division, and kind of an overview. In one of their initial visits, Greenplay came out and conducted several focus groups, community workshops, as well as an online and written survey, and has previously been at a council meeting to present results of the community needs assessment efforts. In addition to that, council will recall that our consultants conducted a grasp analysis, that's their specific parks and trails analysis, and they provided a presentation on the results and the needs identified through that assessment. In addition, we have had several meetings with presentations on site-specific concept plans. We've also had our concept plans in their final version posted for public comment on our open town hall for the last 2 months. Council did adopt the site-specific concept plan for War Memorial Field, and we have just completed phase 1 construction of that concept plan. And at the next meeting as well, we will be coming back to you with the revised concept incorporating phase 2 construction and asking council for permission to go to bid with the phase 2 construction, which is the parking lot improvements, as well as the boat launch improvements, water access improvements, and stormwater improvements. The other concept plans that have been previously presented and revisions provided are for City Beach, the downtown waterfront, Traverse Centennial, Great Northern Sports Complex. And one thing I want to note on all of these concept plans, just for public clarification, because we have gotten some questions about this over the last week, is relative to the City Beach Master Plan. The master plan, the concept plan as presented, and anticipates a land swap to accomplish that concept. Approval of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is not approval of the land swap itself. That will be a separate action that will come before council. We anticipate probably in the next month to 6 weeks to consider scheduling a public hearing. So council could adopt this master plan, including the concept plans, and ultimately through the public hearing process decide not to do a land swap. And then as we move forward with concept plans, then there would be revisions accordingly with that. So I just want to clarify that so that the public is clear that with that included in this master plan, that does not give approval for a land swap. So that would be a separate action that would need to be taken. And then finally, Tom will have some discussion tonight about the issue of dogs in parks. And council will recall that we had a survey, our most popular survey ever, online this summer about policies around dogs in parks. Tom, through Greenplay, they don't have a very specific recommendation, policy recommendation about dogs in parks. Staff are working on the results of those surveys and coming back to council with a policy recommendation. We anticipate that will be back before council next month. So for those who are interested, and many people participated in our Dogs in Parks survey, there will not be a detailed discussion on that tonight because there will be a detailed discussion on that next month. So we're working on that. That will be coming back for you, but you'll see in Tom's recommendations, he'll be talking about dogs in parks and that we need to consider some new policies in that regard. So With that, I think I've given kind of the overview, and I'll hand it over to you, Kim, because this is your baby.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. And I thought about bringing a little marker to put a great big smile on my mask for the permagrin on how pleased I am with the process and to be at this point in it. Again, I've been here for a long time, and we've been looking forward to this direction and guiding document for a long time. The process has been quite robust with public input. We've had focus groups, citizens of Sandpoint surveys, open surveys to the public, and really an incredible public outreach for input into this plan. As we narrowed the plan down, I learned a lot more about master planning in general, working with Tom from Greenplay, and that there's a lot of communities that want different things out of master plans. There may be as a person that they want to come in and have maybe update their master plan every 5 years, and then it'll sit on the shelf. People that go through a process and also varied degrees of public input. And so our master plan has gleaned, I think, and Tom can speak to this, an immense, a great amount of public input and participation in the process. But the real cool part of our plan, and I really want to give credit to Jennifer this, was to come in and have a working plan and a guiding document that was very specific. And I learned from Tom that there are some agencies that want to have very general stuff. But our position from day one was say, hey, we're bringing in you as a professional. We're asking you to glean the public input and give us some very specific guidance for a working tool that we can follow for the next 30 plus years. And I really do want to share how critical Jennifer was to that process. And her input too is being able to have the overall vision as a city administrator with the streets plans and the multimodal plans and all the other things and the plans that we're having. And Parks and Recreation is very critical and a high priority for that's why a lot of us live here. So to be able to have that vision and this time is I really want to thank her. She has a strength way more than I did. I'm very focused on kind of my Parks and Rec stuff and my little Sandpoint land, but she brings in that vision and a result on this document. So I think what Tom's going to do, we'll go over, give us a brief overview of the process, and then we'll dive into the master plan and we'll focus on kind of the recommendations that begin on page 88 for efficiency of time. It's a lengthy and well-written document, but really I think that why we have Tom available for us tonight is really to kind of get to the meat and potatoes of the recommendations and why we got there. So I'd like to introduce Tom Deal with Greenplay. It's been a joy to work with you, Tom, and tag you're it.
Thank you, Kim and Jennifer. Thank you for the introduction. Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and any city residents, thank you for giving me this opportunity to present. It's been a pleasure to work with the city. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. It's at a fairly high level. Kim and Jennifer have given a great introduction, and then we'll go into the recommendations and action table. So I hope you can see my slide. From an agenda standpoint, we've done a brief introduction. I work for Greenplay, Park and Recreation Management Consulting firm. I've been in this industry my entire life. I've been an operator and a consultant. We're giving you a master plan update. As Jennifer said, we've had many presentations with you and gone through many of the different parts of this plan. So this is a little bit of a high level. We're going to talk in detail about the recommendations, the goals and objectives, and the action plan. And then we'll take comments, questions, and any feedback. As Kim said, one thing that's really unique about Sandpoint, you were very specific with what you wanted, and we've customized this plan for you. And I've got to give you a lot of credit. One of the concept plans that we did as part of this process was Memorial Field, and you've actually completed that project, or at least phase one of it, and are using it, and we haven't finished the master plan. And that's quite unique. So I do believe this is going to be a living, used document, and I'm pleased with that. So it was a very comprehensive process. You've seen this before. These are all the different steps that we've taken, and we're now at what's called the draft plan and the final plan. We've had several revisions, many Zoom meetings with Kim and Jennifer to get to this point. As Jennifer said, we did have a lot of information gathering. Originally we've had 17 public meetings, 3 public forums. We spoke with over 167 different participants in stakeholder meetings and focus group meetings and those public forums. All of that was to learn about your community, about your city, and about your park and recreation system. We took everything we learned and we shared it with our survey firm, which is RRC Associates out of Colorado, and they helped us put together a survey. And we had 551 people complete the online survey or the invitation survey. That's the statistically valid portion. And then we had another 562 people complete the open link survey. That was available for everyone in the community. Those are great numbers. We ideally try to get 300 for the statistically valid survey. The entire survey report is part of the appendix of the document, the draft document, so you can see all of it there. Some of the highlights from the survey, respondents placed a very high priority on trails, bike paths, and bike trails. And so that's one of our focus areas. Future improvements for trails, trail connectivity, also had interest in an indoor facility. City beach was seen as very important. And then communication was an important item. So you'll see in our recommendations that we've addressed those, and we've addressed anything that came up in the survey, anything that came up in our public engagement, as well as our staff engagement, and our grasp analysis and our level of service analysis. There was support for funding mechanisms. Public-private partnerships were what was identified as the most desirable by city residents. Fee increases and tax increases received less support. Overall, residents were very satisfied mostly with what's offered in Sandpoint. The park and recreation events were perceived as successful and had a high satisfaction rating. Program satisfaction was strongest among cultural and music and aquatic programs. Some of the standalone programs like arts and adult programs needed some attention. So you'll see again when we get to our recommendations, we go very, very detailed into that. Jennifer mentioned that we did a level of service analysis and used GRASP. That's a proprietary system that we have. We had 2 people on site. They went in every one of your parks and they, using GIS data, laid out where your parks were and all of your amenities, scored them all, and from there we're able to benchmark you against over 400 other agencies that we've done projects with, and that helped tremendously with our recommendations as well. And again, the entire GRASP report is in the overall report, and there's even an appendix that lists more than what's in the body. During the process, we came up with these master plan recurring themes. So these are things that we saw during public engagement, we saw from the survey, we saw with our own eyes, David saw with his level of service analysis, we heard from staff and stakeholder interviews. So these are the items that you see here are what we built our recommendations and our action plan to address. I think you can see them there. They are listed in the report. So I'm not going to read them because in a moment when we go through the action plan and the recommendations, we'll cover each one of them. So now I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to show you the body of the report and the goals and objections and action plan. So in your report, as Kim said, it's page 84, are the key issues and recurring themes. And these are the same ones that I listed. Is this large enough for you to see, or would you like me to enlarge it?
Larger,
We
please.
okay?
Well, ask for larger. Yeah. A bit if you can, please.
Is that better?
A little bit.
Can you
Okay,
go
is
more?
that better?
One more.
Okay, I'm not sure if they'll go off the screen, but we'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 200
Go on.
might go off the screen.
That's great.
Well, they can read the words.
Okay, so keeping affordability, making sure all facilities and services were accessible, improve communication, ensure appropriate staffing levels, maintain necessary infrastructure. The future of the festival was one of the reoccurring themes that we wanted to make sure we factored in. Outdoor fields, greater playability, turf fields, improve city beach and the waterfront, make them year-round opportunities, improve trail connectivity, boating and water access, parking, signage, fiscal sustainability, looking at a multi-purpose indoor facility for all ages, retention of open space, ice skating arena, indoor tennis, indoor pool infrastructure at City Beach, trail connectivity. So those were some of the key things. From a demographic standpoint, we know that Sandpoint's population is going to continue to grow, and there's going to be changes in the population, so we took that into account. When we looked at the trends that we studied, the key trends were walkability, winter activities, and art and cultural activities. So these are the main themes that we're going to focus on. Maintain what we have, improve condition and maintenance of parks and facilities, do more to serve teens, adults, and seniors, improve connectivity of trails and pathways, preserve green space and appropriate land acquisition. These were key issues that we identified: environmental conservation, sustainability, that previous park planning was reactionary and opportunistic. So what we saw when we looked at some of the previous planning, like with City Beach, there wasn't an overall plan. Things were done piecemeal. Improve City Beach in the waterfront area, improve playability at Memorial Field, improve communication, improve playability for all athletic fields, retain open space, trail and bike path connectivity, consider indoor facilities, consider an ice rink, enhance special events, enhance programs for adults and art programs. So we took all of that information, that was what we learned, and we came up with our recommendation and action plan. And this is on page 87. So what I showed you, I'm not sure if Kim had sent you to the right page. I might have showed you a section earlier than what you thought. So our first goal was to provide integrated and comprehensive parks and recreation facilities to serve Sandpoint's needs. And what we've done there is we have several objectives, and the objectives that we developed for Sandpoint are very specific and detailed, as Kim said, compared to what we do in a lot of other agencies. So it was objective 1.1 was to maintain and enhance existing facilities, parks, trails, and open spaces. And we put a rationale for each one. The rationale here was based on our feedback, our consultant observations, and the public input, and the statistically valid survey. These were all identified as important. There is an entire section here with greater detail of information. And I'm not going to read each one of these. I'm going to move along and show you the action table as well, and then we can take questions and answer any questions you might have. But I want to show you all the areas that we specifically focused on for maintaining and existing facilities, parks, and open spaces. So we looked at City Beach and the Windbag Marina. We looked at the City Dog Park. We looked at Euclid Ave, the fairgrounds, Farman Park, Farman Sidwell Elementary School, the property there, Hickory Street Park. I'm not going to say this properly. Lake Penderall Alternative School, Lakeview Park, the Little Sand Creek Watershed, Again, I'm not going to probably say that. Mechanic Trailhead, Old Ninth Grade Field, Ponderosa Bay Trail Connection, Pine Street Park, Ponderay Field of Dreams, the Sand Creek Parking Lot, Traverse Great Northern Centennial Sports Complex, War Memorial Field, Washington Elementary School. So we looked at all of those. Normally in a community, it's a broader based picture. So we went detailed for you based on input from Jennifer and Kim. And you'll see when we get down to the action table, there's actionable items for each one of these areas. Objective 1.2 was explore improving and adding trail and pathway connectivity, making Sandpoint a walkable community. It had similar rationale from the feedback from our observations and from the public input. At another time, you could read that entire paragraph, which is kind of the explanation of that objective. Objective 1.3 was protect environmentally sensitive areas and protect them by incorporating that. I got a slide to the side. Incorporating them into the park and recreation system. Again, we had a rationale and we incorporated other future planning efforts should be included. As Kim had mentioned, all this is tied into some of your other plans. Objective 1.4 was explore additional land acquisition for new parks near newer or underserved neighborhoods. Objective 1.5 was to continue to address ADA accessibility for all facilities. Objective 1.6 was to upgrade existing playgrounds. 1.7 was to develop additional recreation facilities and amenities in partnership with or by supporting others. So we were recommending that Sandpoint not necessarily build an indoor facility, but look at what your need is and see if there can be partnership opportunities. Plan for continued and increased public access to the community shorelines. We heard how important access to your water was. Explore alternative uses for community open spaces such as plazas and community gardens. 1.10 was future land acquisition. So we have a specific actionable items for that. We talked about the Baldy property and additional property throughout, and even the former University of Idaho property as things that should be considered. 1.11 was implement site-specific master plans for War Memorial Field, City Beach, the downtown waterfront, Traverse Great Northern Centennial Sports Complex. And as I said, you've already implemented phase 1 of the War Memorial Field, and I think you've seen that has been successful. Goal number 2 is to support and improve recreation programs and services, has an important component of Sandpoint community life. Objective 2.1 is to monitor the participation and usage of programs, facilities, and services, and make appropriate adjustments based on the collected data. So that is not just having programs, but to actually monitor them and increase, decommission, make changes based on data that you're able to collect. Enhance special event programming. And we're going to, in our action table, have quite a few recommendations for that. Another objective was explore opportunities to increase recreational programming and service delivery on demand and based on demand and trends by partnering with others and providing distinctive, unduplicated programs through the city. So what we were saying here is that we're recommending that if there's other service providers, don't necessarily duplicate what they're doing, work to partner with them. And then the programs that the city runs, make sure they're unique and distinctive. Continue to monitor affordability of programs and services. Objective 2.5, continue to work with the community recreation, arts and cultural and preservation organizations to ensure appropriate facilities are available. So partnering and working with them. Continuing to explore partnerships to enhance programming opportunities. So again, that's looking at to partner with possibly the school district, the YMCA, service organizations, and so forth. Goal 3 was to continue to improve organizational efficiencies, implement the new mission and vision statements. So part of what we did during one of our visits is we worked with Kim and his staff, and we helped to develop a new vision, new mission, and new core values. And they're all included in the report. Ensure the organizational structure of the division remains efficient. So we've got recommendations how they can be constantly looking at what they're doing and making sure it's the most efficient operation. Enhance and improve external communication regarding division activities, programs, and services to increase community awareness. So again, we have several actionable items that will help with that. Staff appropriately to meet current demand and maintain established quality of service. We looked at the organizational structure and the staffing, and we have recommendations there that can make the division more efficient. To develop joint operating agreements with the school district and identify how they can be best developed to both benefit the park and the recreation division and the school and maximize their potential. Explore additional partnerships to assist with funding, volunteering, and marketing. To work with other divisions to increase safety and security. And design and work toward a zero waste parks and recreation system. So that's the pack it in and take it back out programs. We had a goal for increasing financial opportunities. One objective was to explore additional funding options. We did a funding exercise with the staff and identified many opportunities for funding and grants and other support. To explore opportunities to increase partnerships. Pursue grant and philanthropic opportunities. Objective 4.4 was to review current user fees for resident and non-resident. So that's to make sure that the fees are appropriate, that they're both affordable, and that they're paying for the services or paying for the portion of the service that you're anticipating. Pursue alternative funding opportunities and explore capital funding opportunities. And again, the funding exercise that we did will help with that. Explore dedicated funding sources for park maintenance, park-specific conceptual plans, implementing funding for them. Review cost recovery policies and explore additional funding sources. Well, this is really the actionable part of the plan that we're going to look at now. So what we've done is we developed an action table. I'm going to make this smaller just for a moment so that you can see what is on the screen. So we have provided you with what we believe in 2020 dollars to be the costs for the work that is recommended at City Beach. So we have all the different detailed items that construction and developers and contractors would need, and the estimated square footage based on 2020 costs. We've done the same thing for the Sand Creek downtown conceptual plan that we developed. So we have all of those type of costs. And we did the same thing for the Traverse Centennial Great Northern Sports Complex. Our recommendations themselves are set up so that there are things that we're recommending you do in the short term between now and the next 3 years, the midterm 4 to 6 years, long-term 7 to 10 years. And then there are things that we're recommending you do on an ongoing or a continuous basis. This is the most detailed action plan that I've developed in my 5 years. And I believe you have a copy of this. It is in the report, and I have to make it a little bit smaller so that you can see it all. But what you can see here is that we have the goal listed and the objective. And for every one of those, we have action items. We have a capital cost when it's appropriate, operational budget impact when it's appropriate. We list the time frame to complete. And this is something we haven't done for anyone else, but for you, we listed the source of where this, both the goal, the objective, and the desire to have this action came from. And this part is a good 25 to 30 pages. If I could ask for some feedback as to the best way you would like to go through this, you can ask questions and I can take you to sections. I can give you a high-level overview of each one of these goals and objectives.
Yeah, why don't we start there, Tom?
With a high-level overview?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first goal, and it's to provide the integrated and comprehensive park and recreation facilities to serve Sandpoint's needs. And now we're talking about the objective of maintaining, enhancing existing facilities, parks, trails, and open spaces. And, you know, we have an overall recommendation or an action that you should monitor the condition of existing parks, trails, pathways, facilities, and open spaces, as these facilities have been identified by residents as being of high importance. Address low-scoring components and amenities from the master plan inventory by upgrading, replacing, and repurposing components and amenities where appropriate. With most agencies, that's where this one would have ended. What we did with Sandpoint is we now have gone and looked at each one of those areas I mentioned before. So bald foot disc golf course, make improvements and set standards at this property, including additional recreation opportunities in comfort and convenient amenities such as picnic tables. City Beach and Windbag Marina, implement the site-specific master plan. In the short term, consider adding picnic areas. Also make upgrades to the existing playground, but these should reflect the future redevelopment in the entire park and the playground area. Add permanent restrooms at Windbag Marina. So we're getting very specific. And here we've actually included an anticipated budget, you know, a capital cost or an operational budget. We talk about the city dog park. Is there any one of all of those areas in specific you'd like to talk a little bit more about?
Tom, just a quick question.
Yes.
So the under operational budget impact, that's actually capital cost,
Yes,
right?
I think this should have,
To me, those
this
are two
probably
different
should have
things.
been in the capital cost, and that's something that we missed during our draft review, but we'll change that for the next version. And that's one of the things, you know, this document has been provided to all of you, and if you have any feedback and you share that with Jennifer and Kim, it'll come back to me and we'll update this correctly. I apologize. This here, though, is the, this probably also, I have to go back and look, I think this might also be more of a capital cost, but again, I will just have to go back to my notes. Do you want me to read through each one of these, or are there any that are of specific interest, or do you want to go to the next item?
Council, do you have a preference? Anyone? Keep going. Yeah, we can just go to the next one.
Okay. But you can see how detailed we've gotten, and if there's anything of specific interest, we can also go to that. So we have several more action items about implementing standardized evaluation methods, and continuously evaluating staffing, monitoring staffing and levels and adjust as needed. Creating a parks pathway repair and replacement plan. The next objective was to improve and add trail and pathway connectivity. And I apologize, somehow there's a couple of things that happened when it got formatted that we'll have to go back and fix, like the space and division, and I apologize, I didn't pick that up. But here we're talking about working with other city divisions and making sure that the master plan is linked to all the other plans that Jennifer had mentioned. We're talking about environmental sensitivity. Here we're talking about land acquisition, and we get, a little bit specific that Sandpoint needs to add 14 acres of park and open space to maintain the current level of population growth through 2025. Address ADA accessibility at all facilities.
Tom, can I stop you for a sec?
Yes, you can.
So the time frame for this plan is we're considering this is 20 to 30 year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And did you look at population projections for let's say 2040 or 2050, and look
Yes.
at the amount of park space that would need to be acquired by that time to maintain the same level of service as we currently have?
Mayor, we looked at our population projections. We started the plan in 2019, and we did 5-year increments, 5, 10, 15 years. All of the research and data shows if you go out much farther than 15 years, it's really a guesstimate more than a projection. But we have factored all of that in to our demographic study, and right now the recommendation of the 14 acres takes you up to 2025. I can go back and take a look and see if we can add more there, what would potentially be needed in the next 5 and 10 years.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be curious to see what that projection is for 15 years out.
Okay.
You can continue.
Okay. As far as developing additional recreation facilities and amenities, similar to the way that you did the conceptual plans for the 4 site-specific areas, to truly know what you might need in the way of an indoor facility and whether it's feasible or not, we would recommend that you do what's called a feasibility conceptual study, and we've given you the capital cost for that. And we're recommending that you do that in the midterm, maybe not in the next 3 years, but in the second phase of the plan. Public access to the community shorelines. So we're recommending that you look at the conceptual plan for City Beach, and if you could implement that, that would be a great thing, as well as the waterfront plan, and you can refer to the cost tables for that. We are recommending that you take any of your open spaces and plazas or community gardens, and that you turn those into small parklet spaces or splash pads or small performance areas, small social gathering spaces, especially with what's going on now with COVID-19 and all kinds of other social issues. People are trying to get out and be outside. So some of these can be great areas for gathering like that. We talked about future land acquisition. We have a recommendation to look at the Baldy property, the University of Idaho property, and also the land swap that's being considered. We were recommending that when you can, you implement the site-specific master plans, and this was written, before War Memorial Field was completed. So that was one that we're recommending that you would do, as well as the other site-specific master plans. As far as supporting recreation programs and services, we're recommending that you monitor all of your programs and facility usage and make adjustments, develop memorandums of agreements wherever possible. What we really heard from people was the desire for community events and activities. So to do that in partnership with either other organizations or as part of arts, cultural, and the preservation master plan. You have wonderful outdoors, and you have wonderful parks, and people are looking to do activities and special events. As a division, we have a recommendation to take a look at your programming strategy. The programming that the division does, you don't have a lot of indoor facilities, you don't have a lot of staff, you don't have a lot of traditional indoor programs. So we were recommending that you partner with the other service providers and promote those that are available, and then the ones that you do to be unique and distinctive to Sandpoint rather than duplicate what's currently occurring. As far as organizational efficiencies, it would be to follow the new mission and vision. We're recommending that the division develop a marketing plan, branding for the division, use of social media, more use and development of the division's website, and look at partnership opportunities. The fact that we did a community survey and that you do community surveys are wonderful. We're recommending that you continue to do that and even expand upon the use of your community surveys. As you begin to implement the conceptual plans, make sure that they're performing the way they are and that you have the right staffing to not only promote the activities, but to manage them and to take care of the facilities. Again, reviewing the joint operating agreements with the school district. I think the school district benefits from parks and now from Memorial Field. The division needs to make sure that with those joint operating agreements that there's benefit to the division as well, maybe with other school facilities. Explore additional partnerships and funding. Work with other divisions to increase safety and security. That's pretty obvious. As far as the financial opportunities, here's another mistype. I apologize. I'll fix that. Don't know how that got by us. Explore opportunities to increase sponsorships. I know that you have a grant writer, but to continue to pursue grant opportunities and philanthropic donations with your new facilities, and with this new master plan, you can look at potential accreditation for the division, and that also could help with grant opportunities. So that's a general overview. I wanted to make sure there was plenty of time for questions or comments, or to go anywhere specific in the document.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that.
You're welcome, Mayor.
Council, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Tom. This is great. This is, I think, the information that Kim and the department and city has been looking for years. This is going to give great guidance for the next short term, midterm, and long term. And then a question for us, maybe somebody can explain it to me, like that U of I property,
Mhm.
because it's not, we don't own it. Like how would we leverage and try to get some park space in that area?
So Tom can weigh in on this too, and there's more detail on that, actually not in the table, but in the more narrative on the recommendations and action plans. The recommendation relative to the former University of Idaho property, now moving forward as University Park Development, is that as one of the conditions on the developer should be to include a neighborhood park within that development to serve that development. In terms of a broader park serving beyond that development, the broader city, in the narrative, green place suggestions include looking at other areas kind of more central on the north side or further on the north side where we expect to see continued growth. So whether that be potentially considering the Baldy property, considering property acquisition opportunities to add property to existing Cedars Park property that we own, it's just north of the roundabout at Schweitzer, or if there are other areas within the north area, or in conjunction with the school district, looking at, again, the school playgrounds and school areas as parks in off-school hours. Those are the suggestions for additional parks properties on the north side, as opposed to a large acquisition or a large regional park, I guess, on the former University of Idaho property. Tom, did I get that discussion correct?
Yes, and I was going to mention also in the whole GRASP analysis, we did heat maps and things like that show where you have good coverage and not good coverage. And from that is how we came up with the recommendations that you just summarized very well. So I was just showing you the table of contents. You would be able to see that both in this inventory section and then again in the appendix.
Thank you. I guess my statement is more of one that I really, really like that property, and the property is so parked out and so pretty right now that it would be, I would love it if we can leverage conversation, like however we could talk to the developer and try to maintain some of that, knowing that we have some other acquisitions and some other places in those northern areas that we have hot spots. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I have two questions. One concerning the master plan for the beach. On behalf of the unofficial volleyball union, talking to the players a lot. I'm at the beach about 3 to 4 times a week. They're concerned that if this gets passed, that where the volleyball courts are at now, that's exactly where it's going to be. Is that true?
What I can,
Like on the map?
they're conceptual plans, and
Right.
from our standpoint, they're meant to show all of the different amenities that are being considered and that it is theoretically feasible. In the final design, those things could slightly change. I think Jennifer and Kim, you might be able to provide a little bit of more information from the city standpoint.
Yeah, I would just add, the conceptual plans are just what I kind of referenced at the beginning. That's the concept.
Right.
So locations of specific amenities, whether they go with that concept, whether they're replicated in another park, all of that gets kind of wedded through, and there's an additional opportunity for public process as we move forward with actual design. So these are for public thinking about this. This is a good process to compare this to. Actually, a couple would be either our Memorial Field process and our most recent downtown revitalization. So we had concepts for both, but as we moved forward to what's realistic, what's changed with what the community wants at the time, that ends up getting changed in the design of the plan. So
Yeah.
it's not a foregone that with approval of these concept plans, that means that volleyball courts or basketball courts or any other amenity is eliminated from a park necessarily.
Just wanted to make sure.
Well, the big takeaway for you and the group there is we very much acknowledge that Sandpoint's always been a big volleyball town and will continue to be so. And
Awesome.
we'll always have sand volleyball at City Beach.
Yeah, I was just making sure. The other thing, Tom, is you mentioned the Baldy property. I guess I'm having a hard time. I heard, did you recommend that property? Is that what I heard correctly? Green Plain recommended it?
Well, our understanding is that is a property that the city, it's leasing the use of it. It's not owned by the city or by Recreation. And we're recommending that there could be more and better amenities at the Baldy property, depending on what happens with it.
Right. And considering its location, does Green Plain think that'd be a good spot for other things, considering it's so far away from really downtown?
That's a portion of the city that could benefit from additional park space and amenities.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Mayor, I have a.
Yeah.
So thinking about the disc golf course, it seems like it referenced that it was a city park. It's not a park, is it right? They're leasing it from us.
That's correct. That's correct. It's actually, that property is owned by the sewer fund ratepayers. So our sewer fund business, if you will, part of the city. And that's where, again, in order for it to be an official park, a long-term park or open space asset of the city, it would need to be acquired by the general fund for that purpose.
Okay, because when I reading the action items, it kind of appeared that it was already a park. And so I thought I misunderstood that. And the second thing is I'm glad that we're going to be able to discuss the concepts, because I'm not really keen on the splash pad at City Beach, but that's $500,000 and we have a city beach for children to play in. So that's all.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council? Yeah, Deb, go ahead.
Is she frozen?
Council Rule?
Am I frozen?
Yes, you are. You're giving us a high five though. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to tell my children to turn off their Wi-Fi so that maybe I won't freeze, because we're all sharing probably. Video game. And I have priority right now. So as I was reading through the document, I was a little bit concerned because there are parts of it that, encourage more vitality, let's say in our City Beach area. But then we're also trying to say, well, we need to diversify where people are going because it's already a very crowded area. And so our large overview plan seems like in some ways it's pulling more people down there as opposed to trying to disperse into different areas. And I also noted some conflicts in, for instance, wanting to put like the sports complex completely at Traverse and take tennis courts out of other areas. And then as I read into the document more, we're talking about, keeping amenities in all neighborhoods so that, for instance, smaller children or seniors who are not as mobile don't have to cross busier roads to get to those amenities. So as I read into it, I saw some conflicts about, well, now if I live in one side of town, I have to go to the other side of town to get to the pickleball courts, whereas it used to be over here. Or so I'm a little bit concerned that we're consolidating a bit too much when we should be, even if we're going to have a sports complex for tournament style activities, that we still remember that we should have some of these other amenities dispersed throughout the city so that our less mobile populations can use them and have many varied interests taken care of. So I just wanted to kind of state that and maybe point that out to some of the other members.
Yeah, thanks for those comments, Deb.
Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
No, I just wanted to give another example as oh, it says I'm unstable. Can you hear me? Oh, went away. For instance, like Kate pointed out, the splash pad. We do have water there, but yet in Traverse, we don't have water. And I noticed that there was a splash pad in both places, and maybe it best serves the city economically to have one splash pad in an area where there's not water and less maintenance costs, and then maybe pulling some people out of the city beach in the summer and also having it in a neighborhood that is water underserved, shall we say. So I'm glad that these are not final plans and they're a larger overview, but I just saw in how things were written somewhat of a conflict. Comment would be that about purchasing a lot of property to keep the amount of space, well, maybe not a lot of property, but we're talking about property purchase. Population grows, and I'm assuming.
Deb, we lost you after property purchase.
Okay. Can you hear me yet?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm sorry, I don't have a good, okay. Sorry, I don't have a good connection this evening. I apologize. So property purchases versus we're obviously not adding in our watershed property and assuming that there'll be recreation on it, because that would far and exceed needs for other property purchases, except for having parks in neighborhoods that are accessible. So I think we should think about making our connectivity to our watershed a lot stronger so that we can, as we grow many, many years down the road, use that for recreation also. And that's it.
Great comments, Counselor. Appreciate that. Tom, do you want to respond to any of that?
Certainly. As far as the Councilwoman and everyone else, the mayor, as far as the amenities, the way they were laid out, for instance, like the splash pad at City Beach that was mentioned a moment ago, I believe that's also a multi-purpose area that could also be used potentially for concerts, ice skating, and many other things. But it might not be. The moving of the pickleball and tennis courts together, that's basically a trend that we see across the country. It's a best practice. One single pickleball court doesn't typically benefit the overall community as well as several pickleball courts together where people can go and play and have leagues and tournaments and play. The same with tennis courts, same reason you usually put fields together. The amenities that are typically put throughout the community in parks and things like that are walking trails, benches, all of those other things. But again, that all can still be considered. We were just looking at what are typically best practices.
Okay, thank you for that response. Tom, I had that same question though too. There must be some kind of, and I hear what you're saying, that it's best practices to have at least some consolidation or at least have some multiples of those kinds of amenities for league play and tournament play and that kind of thing. But I think the counselor brings up a good point that, there's also a benefit to having some more localized assets dispersed throughout the community. And how do you find that balance between appropriate dispersion that's easier access for neighborhood use and a certain amount of consolidation that can accommodate that kind of league play?
The mayor, that's a very good question. Just our experience, what we see all across the country is when a park system puts in one standalone tennis court, typically it's used a little bit for tennis and it's used for a lot of other activities that aren't tennis related because there's only one court there. And people get frustrated when they show up to play and there's only one court and someone else is playing. The same with pickleball. We typically find that when they're grouped together, people will go there and play, but that's something that you can consider. My recommendation might be, if you were to do a standalone court like that, that you make it a combination tennis and pickleball court so that either or group could play.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a ridiculous question for Kim. What is the difference between a pickleball court and a tennis court?
Size and the physical. I would be a good candidate for pickleball. I used to play a lot of tennis, right? I have fake joints now. So pickleball is a little more body friendly. It's growing a lot in popularity. It's highly social.
So they can't be played on the same court?
It can, but then what happens in conflict is you have pickleball lines and tennis court lines, and it just lines on lines. And even though we're really lucky in Sandpoint is that the tennis community also is the pickleball community a lot. But there are a lot of areas in the United States right now where they're at each other's throats.
Oh.
And so that's what we want to avoid at all costs. And I've been working for 2 years at doing that, and we're doing a pretty good job.
Sure. Thank you.
But we're luckily, they're both court sports.
Mm-hmm.
One takes a little bit less steps
Okay.
to participate in.
Thank you very much.
Gracefully said, Kim. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? Yeah, Councilwoman Rule, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Deb.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. I just like to point out that I respect that you're saying what everybody else does around the rest of the country, but I would still like to put a plug in for Sandpoint, saying that we are a very unique place and we roll a little bit differently. So I think people ask for things to be close to them because we do have such an active population. So maybe if tournaments are going on, there's seniors that aren't involved in a kids tournament that still want to get out there at the same time. So, I appreciated that you looked into some of our other water access points here where our streets end into the lake that have never really been taken advantage of. So that again disperses a lot of that water access and play and maybe takes away the crowding at the beach. So I appreciate that you looked into that also.
That's a good point. And, as I understand, back to this idea of consolidation versus dispersion, as I understand from an operational standpoint, that consolidation would make maintenance and operations easier from the staff side. And
More so, yes. Correct.
I'm sorry?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And Kim, I was hoping you could speak to that a little bit because, it seems, for the public who's looking at this, like the counselor is and saying, but we've already spent, I don't know what it costs to install a tennis court, but I imagine, it's tens of thousands of dollars. And when we already have an existing court that's, people are used to, they know to go there and somewhere near their neighborhood and play, to deconstruct a court and then reconstruct a new court somewhere else seems like quite an expense. And so can you give us a sense of what kinds of operational efficiency that you would envision in terms of dollars and cents by consolidation versus, having a dispersion of courts? And we're just using tennis courts as an example because I think maybe that's an easy one to paint the picture a little bit.
In this particular case, before we even started on the plan, I came up with a tennis court plan. The tennis courts that we have at Lakeview Park right now are shot. They need totally rebuilt. They need moved. With all the trees around them and all the debris, it requires daily maintenance. And as far as blowing them off and whatnot, they're nice, the trees, as far as the shade, giving shade, but it's very difficult to keep them clean. So that was slated to look at some options there. The City Beach Court, about 15, 20 years ago, I can't remember what it was, we've had a big community effort, and that thing's bulletproof. But again, it's looking at what And I realize that, it's when you've had something in your neighborhood, but when you look at the bigger picture of Sandpoint, we're a nice city, but we're not huge, right? And so to go from one place, to go over to the sports complex to participate with public transportation, and it's nice to have everything in your own backyard, especially when you've already had it. So looking at the space, and we looked at relocating the tennis courts from City Beach, that plan came from how can we maximize our passive recreational summer opportunity and then better utilize the inside of the park that's very underused right now. And yeah, we do, the tennis courts do get some use. Volleyball courts get a lot of use. So that's why when we looked at overall is there a better use for that as we look for our 50-year plan? So I think the biggest part is to look down the road 30 to 50 years, and truly Kim, look at what, go ahead.
I was just going to add, and Kim, if you remember, a lot of our public engagement was with pickleball players, tennis players, users of the fields and everything. And those are the groups that asked us to group the tennis courts together and to group the pickleball courts together. They specifically asked us, many of them, not all of them, but not to put one court here, one court there, one court there. That doesn't meet their needs. So that was not only what we see around the country, it's also what we heard from the pickleball players and the tennis players. Not all of them, but the majority of them.
And the one thing I might add, since we're talking about tennis, it'd be a good opportunity. Right now, Sandpoint, City of Sandpoint is really the only public provider of tennis courts. We at 10,000 population. I did a quick search about a week ago, and another community, the most they had anywhere from 3 courts to 6 courts for a town of 10,000 people. We have 8, and the reason is because the school district doesn't provide courts where there's a lot of communities that do. The cities of Dover and Ponderay and Kootenai don't provide any public courts. And so by default, we've always been, and actually I have a meeting in a couple of weeks with the tennis and pickleball community wanting to know what our future is for courts. It's like, well, we're actually by far exceeding the per 1,000 courts by a bunch. So it's a bigger question when you look at that and people start getting focused on that, looking at Sandpoint has always been the provider, right? And so maybe it's time for us to look at some of these standards out there and let some of these other communities step up and enjoy their opportunity to provide recreational amenities. So just throw that out there.
And two, Cam, just a plug for Sandpoint Tennis Association, and a lot of the players have, from what I understand, contributed a tremendous amount over the years to our facilities.
We have worked hand in hand. They have been for the last, since I've been here, 30 years, have worked hand in hand to rebuild all the tennis courts, to get them resurfaced, new fencing. It's been a group effort, and they're awesome to work with, and we will continue to do that. But we all need to keep in mind that we are continuing to provide recreational amenities for 40,000 people on the tab of 10,000 people. So, I'm really stoked about the Field of Dreams opportunity and the Ponderay sales tax and their recreational opportunities over there to step up. Maybe work with the school district and find out what their needs. Again, very rarely do you have the city providing the sole courts for everybody. I think we might have one in Clarkport, a court. I don't know if it has nets.
No, I appreciate that you bring that point up, Kim, because I think it's really important for us to remember in this plan, and as we're talking about funding and everything else, and it's not just the 46,000 Bonner County population, but it's also the 100,000 or more, hundreds of thousands of visitors that we have coming here every year from outside of the area that are using, our park systems as well. So,
but our demographic is very active, and Deb's right. We have active people. That's why we live here and continue to play. So that's also a consideration, but we need some partners.
Yeah. Council, any further questions or comments on the plan? Thank you again for that presentation, Tom, and for all your hard work you and the team putting into this plan. We really appreciate your professionalism and dedication, and it looks like a great final product. So thank you very much.
Mayor, thank you. Council members, thank you. Staff, I'll look for your feedback, and we'll make any necessary edits, and then we'll continue to work with you. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. And thanks again to you, Kim. Really appreciate your leadership on this, and Jennifer as well. And thanks for a long, hard battle on this final product. So well done. Okay. During our last regular meeting on August 19th, Council voted to table adoption of the annual appropriation ordinance and resolution to reserve the right to recover foregone increase in a subsequent year. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to take these items from the table. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Williamson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule?
Yes.
Councilman Espero?
Yes.
Councilman Darling?
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister?
Yes.
Councilman Grove?
Yes.
All right, we will now consider this item. Our Finance Director, Sarah Lenz, and City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton will now provide us with an update on the status of final budget figures. Thank you, ladies.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as council will recall, we requested that council table this at the last meeting while we waited for final numbers from the state regarding urban renewal dollars with the Governor Little's COVID CARES Act funding for property tax relief. Sarah has updated our property tax schedule. This is part of our budget book. We've reviewed this previously, but this includes the final numbers as confirmed by the state with the city of Sandpoint participating in the property tax relief program. As reflected on this table, the total amount in property tax relief is $934,757 that will ultimately be in the form of property tax relief to Sandpoint property taxpayers. And we also did an update on the property tax calculation. And we actually updated this in a couple of ways, both including the property tax relief numbers, which ultimately affects our property tax levy amount. But in addition to that, we recalculated based on the average value of a home within Sandpoint city limits. We've typically used $200,000 in this table in the past, but our median value of homes in Sandpoint is $359,000. With that, and assuming that the homeowner, this is their primary residence, so they are receiving the homeowner's exemption, this property tax relief would amount to $240.28 on a home valued at $359,000. You can see the levy rate per thousand. So for property owners that they have their assessed value from Bonner County, you can see that the levy amount, we've gone from $4.7 per $1,000 of property value to 3.78. And again, that's primarily due to participation in the property tax relief program.
And Jennifer, is that just available to those who have a homeowner's exemption? Okay.
No, we just use that as the example typically in this table in our budget booklet.
Okay, so it's also available to commercial properties as well?
It's yes, it'll be all assessed properties. So, and again, when you're looking at your assessed value of the property, you can look at that $378 per $1,000 of assessed value.
Good, thank you. Is that it?
Again, it's almost $1 million in property tax relief for Sandpoint property taxpayers this year.
That's fantastic.
That cover everything?
Yep.
That's it, okay, all right. In that case, the public hearing on this matter was held and subsequently closed during the August 19th meeting. Following the public hearing, City Council approved the budget as presented. At this time, the annual appropriation ordinance will be considered, and I will now read the title and the ordinance as follows. An ordinance of the City of Sandpoint, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, titled the Annual Appropriation Ordinance for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020, appropriating $34,601,714 to defray the proper expenses and liabilities of the City of Sandpoint, Idaho for said year pursuant to the provisions of Section 50-1003 Idaho Code, levying a sufficient tax upon the taxable property within said city for general revenue purposes, for which such appropriations are within said city for general revenue purposes, for which such appropriations are made, providing for a copy of this ordinance to be filed with the Bonner County Commissioners and providing for the publication of this ordinance. I would entertain a motion that the ordinance pass its first reading by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Darling?
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister?
Yes.
Councilman Espero?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule?
Yes.
Councilman Grote?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson?
Yes.
The ordinance passed its first reading by title only. I would entertain a motion that the rules requiring 3 separate readings, once in the ordinance's entirety, be suspended, and that the ordinance pass its second and third readings under suspension of the rules. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Rule?
Yes.
Councilman Espero?
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson?
Yes.
Councilman Darling?
Yes.
Councilman Grote?
Yes.
The motion passed. This ordinance is considered read, passed, and adopted under suspension of the rules in the fiscal year 2021 Sandpoint City budget, which includes expenditure funds for each specific lease for the 2020 to 2021 renewal term for lease numbers 92910000596 and 1822829 is hereby approved. Sir, what are those lease numbers?
Those are leases for the fire truck and then also for the sewer, believe it's the dump, the back truck. So we have 2 leases, and that's required by the Columbia Bank to be read into the minutes so that they can give it to their board to actually, it's part of the lease agreement that we have to
Okay.
put it in.
That's a new one on me. The next item on the agenda is the proposed foregone resolution. I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution to reserve the right to recover the foregone increase in a subsequent year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman McAllister?
Yes.
Councilman Grote?
Yes.
Councilman Darling?
Yes.
Councilman Espero?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson?
Yes.
Motion passes. On August 12th, 2020, City Council reviewed proposed changes to city fees and scheduled a public hearing to accept public testimony regarding proposed new fees and existing fees proposed to increase more than 5%. The notice of public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee on August 18th and 25th. Does staff have any additional information to provide regarding the changes in city fees?
One note, we did a presentation on this, Mr. Mayor, at a previous budget workshop relative to the first fee on our schedule. That's the expedited processing fee. To clarify that particular fee, that is a fee that would apply and we would need to bring forward a policy to council in this regard to any of our administrative fees outside of building and planning. So for example, we are looking at the possibility of a policy change relative to timelines for catering permits or some of our other permits, because we frequently get those at the 9th hour on a Friday for a Saturday event, and it's got to go through multiple processes across the city. So kind of encouraging people, it's not that we would necessarily want to collect on this fee, but sometimes it takes a fee to encourage people to get their planning done earlier. So just to clarify the purpose of that expedited processing fee that's at the top of the fee schedule in the amount of $50. So expedited processing fee under building and planning is specifically in that area. This would be a different fee. And again, we don't have a policy for application of it at this time.
Okay. Thank you. We will now move on to the public hearing. This hearing will be conducted under the same rules of procedure as recited earlier for public forum. Once the public hearing is closed, there will be no further opportunity for public input. Council will then discuss amongst themselves the testimony they have heard and what, if anything, they may propose as a result of this public hearing. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The public hearing is now open, and to accept any public testimony and proposed new city fees and existing fees proposed to increase more than 5%. Clerk, do we have anyone online?
If there is anyone participating by Zoom who would like to provide testimony during the public hearing on fees, please raise your hand. We do have one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Grimm?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable council members. Thanks for your time tonight. I've reviewed many of these fees and I do have a number of concerns. My name is Jeremy Grimm, former Planning and Community Development Director for the City of Sandpoint. I've resided in the city for 13 years, currently the president and owner of Whiskey Rock Planning and Consulting. My concerns are as follows, and comments. One, I generally support and agree that growth should pay its fair share in its own way, and growth should not be subsidized by existing residents and taxpayers. A measured and proportional fee structure is a very important part of this philosophy. I do, however, have concerns related to the proposed fees. First, will these fees be in addition to current fees such as the current short plat fee, subdivision fee, and the like? Many of these fees appear to overlap the fees currently being charged by the city and directly challenge the ability for developers to build affordable housing. Second, is there an expectation that with these new fees, the level of service for planning and development activities will improve from its current state? Third, has anyone done a comparative analysis on these fees charged in comparison to other Idaho communities? Has a comparison analysis been provided on the estimated fees or charges for these selected services based on a simple lot split, short plat, or a small subdivision? Many of these fees are cost plus 15%. This appears to be very, very arbitrary, and I would suggest that it looks more like a tax than a fee. For example, a $10,000 review would have a 15% cost of an additional $1,500, where a $20,000 development agreement of review would be $3,000, 100% increase in the charge. And it doesn't seem like there's a nexus between the actual work being performed and the fee structure. So I would certainly caution you that the direction this is going looks far more like a tax than a fee. And as you know, Idaho code strictly regulates what taxes the city can apply. Finally, please consider that Sandpoint does not exist in a vacuum. As growth proceeds in Bonner County, ideally much of this growth would occur where urban services are readily available, thereby minimizing the cost and addition of new roads, traffic, and generally creating a more walkable community. The adoption of such fees will drive growth to the outward extent of Sandpoint, where it's more easily developed, land is more easily developed. So I really consider and ask you to consider, are these fees justifiable? And at these fee levels, how does this compare to any other community in Idaho? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for those questions and comments, Mr. Grimm. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Online? Thank you. Okay. I would invite, is staff willing and able to comment on any of those questions proposed by Mr. Grimm?
Mr. Mayor, before we have comments from staff, do you want to close the public?
I apologize. Yeah, let's do that. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. So at this point, there's no one else that would like to comment at the public hearing. So the public hearing is now closed. And thank you, Amanda, for fielding those questions. Were we able to hear all those questions?
I was. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Mayor. I took some notes. Hopefully I captured the essence of the questions accurately. The first question is, do these fees overlap? The shortest answer I can give you is no, that we are replacing fees. So the way that we publish our fee schedule, and Sarah is welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's the complete list of the fees. So if you don't see a short plat fee on the list, it's because that fee is no longer in place and it's been replaced by something else. So during our workshop that we had with council regarding these fees, we reviewed that. Regarding improving service, as you're aware, our strategic plan, that is a priority that we continue to improve services. I'm of the opinion that yes, some of these fees do enable us to improve services, particularly in the area of enabling us to engage outside or external resources where they're needed when we have those influxes in applications so that we can provide a timely response and to be able to recoup those costs at their actual costs. As far as a comparison within the state of Idaho and other municipalities, yes, we did do an analysis on that, and it was presented during our workshop. I would say, generally speaking, we are lower or equivalent to other municipalities. Yes, it is true that you could find or pick out one fee that would be more than another fee in another municipality. In other words, I can't make a blanket statement that all of these fees are lower compared to all cities, but I can say that I think they're reasonably comparable to the cities that we compared within our region, which does include cities within the state of Idaho as well. I'm sorry, I'm not able to speak, but to the matter of the 15% looks like a tax. Maybe Sarah, Jennifer, or our attorney could weigh in on that. And are these fees justifiable? Yes, we did perform research on this, and again, was presented to council and the public during our last workshop. If you have any other specific questions or a specific detail that you would like more information on, I'll do my best to answer it.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. Does the council have any further questions for Amanda at this point? No? Seeing none. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution for adoption of new city fees and approve of changes to existing fees. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. Discussion? Councilwoman Williamson.
I had a question, perhaps for Jennifer. I think all of us probably received some correspondence from festival organizers with some concerns over the increase of 75 cents per ticket at Memorial Field. And I understand that they're honoring the 2020 passes for next year, 2021, and I was just wondering if any discussions have happened regarding honoring our current fee structure since the festival couldn't go on, and they're honoring, people's contributions for next year. If we're going to stick with the 125, or if we're going to be implementing the additional 75 cents per ticket.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, please.
We received a letter from, actually received a few emails from board members of Festival at Sandpoint. The first letter or email that we received a few days back specifically asked that question relative to tickets that had been sold for the planned festival for 2020, and that they would be rolling over those tickets to the 2021 planned festival. Our response to that was that for any tickets that were sold in 2020 at that time, our current fee schedule provides for the fee of $1.25 per ticket, and we would continue to honor that. So our agreements with Festival require that for each festival year, they provide us with an accounting of tickets sold. And so I responded to Festival, the Festival board member, and advised that Festival should track the tickets that they sold in 2020. And if they could reflect those tickets on a 2021 report, we would accept the $1.25 fee that was in accordance with our current fee schedule. It would be for any new tickets sold for 2021 after this new fee schedule takes place.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councilor Rule, did you have a question or comment? No. Okay. Anyone else? All right. It's been moved and seconded. We will have a roll call vote.
Councilman Grote,
Yes.
Councilman Espero,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson,
I think that was me. Sorry, you guys froze. Were you asking for my vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilman Darling.
Yes.
And the motion passes. The final item on the agenda this evening is a proposed amendment to Sandpoint City Code 1-5-3-N-1, adopting Robert's Rules of Order as the official parliamentary procedure governing city council meetings, as well as city planning and zoning commission meetings and other public city meetings. City Attorney Andy Doman will provide a presentation for us. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation I'm making to the council is to readopt the Robert's Rules of Order for parliamentary procedures affecting not only council meetings, but other meetings of Planning and Zoning Commission and other commissions of the city. I want to give a very brief background on where we started from and where we are today. Robert's Rules of Orders have been used by municipalities, governmental entities, private businesses, and a variety of organizations since the middle of the 1800s. Sandpoint adopted and utilized Robert's Rules of Orders for quite some time. I do have a few slides I want to put up right first. In 2012, slide one. Oh, it is. Okay, I'm sorry. In 2012, the city adopted Parliamentary Procedures Made Easy, a pamphlet and a brochure that was put out by Washington State University as the official parliamentary procedures for the city of Sandpoint. The stated reason was that the Robert's Rules of Orders were not necessarily the best suited for municipalities. Our clerk went back through the minutes of the meetings when this ordinance was passed. We couldn't find a rationale or a reason or even a discussion of why. But subsequently, the parliamentary procedures made easy were utilized and adopted by ordinance in the city of Sandpoint. Slide number 2. This pamphlet was generated from Washington State University. It's approximately 23 pages. It does summarize and lay out a table for how motions are to be entertained by council, how meetings are to be structured and conducted. Many of the rules are the same as Robert's Rules of Order. And in fact, one of the source documents for this publication was Robert's Rules of Order. The one thing that is lacking in these rules is there's no discussion or interpretation of how the rules should be employed or how they should be considered during meetings or during the course and conduct of a meeting. This is slide 3. Our recommendation to council is to adopt Robert's Rules of Order. This is Robert's Rules of Order 12th edition. So we've been through 12 editions of this since the middle of the 1800s. And I propose that you adopt this for 3 reasons. One, Robert's Rules of Order are used for conducting governmental meetings throughout the country. They are the most widely used set of rules for conducting public meetings utilized throughout the United States. It includes, and in this edition includes, cross-referencing tables for reviewing purposes, for motions, order of business. Not only that, it has an interpretation that goes along with each one of those procedures. And you can go back and look at the reasoning and the rationale for how certain matters to be conducted. You can also obtain these rules in brief form. There's a quick reference that's available. They are updated often. As you can see, there's been 12 different editions of this in the last 100 or so years. Recently, in the 12th edition, there's a new section on conducting electronic meetings, which would be a benefit should we have to continue conducting our meetings in the form and fashion that we're doing so today. The one major difference between what we have now and what we would be able to utilize in Robert's Rules of Order, we would go from a static set of rules that has not a lot of interpretation to a dynamic set that are going to change over time. As you all well know, we're going to have to adopt and adapt how we conduct our meetings under the circumstances we're dealing with now, and as we go forward in the future and become more electronically oriented in how we conduct meetings.
Andy, can you explain what you mean when you say it has more room for interpretation? Or
each of the, yes, that's a good question. Each of the, for instance, when you're undertaking a motion, and motions are usually divided into main motions and then incidental motions. So there's a paragraph that talks about a main motion, and I'll show you the table here in a minute. But under that paragraph, there's an interpretation of how that motion should be considered, whether or not it should be seconded, whether or not there should be debate, and how that debate should take place. And that interpretation goes along with that particular rule. Over time, that changes, and especially in the circumstances we have now with electronic meetings, it's going to change quite a bit. So there's a body of interpretation that goes along with each one of those particular rules. The second reason, and that kind of leads into this question,
it was just amazing to me, and it was easy. It was so easy.
Sorry. Oh, it was me this time. I thought it was me. I
thought we needed some more excitement.
Yes, there you go.
Was that a 3-minute clock?
I only got 2.5. As I mentioned, there's there's basically two sets of motions that are to be considered. And the rules don't only limit themselves to motions, but also to order of business. But there's main motions, and that's the stuff we do on a regular basis. 99% of the motions that are brought before the council are to take some action or to take some amendment to action or whatever the case may be. There's also incidental motions, which are usually things that are a matter of questions of order. Should we, table something or, whatever the case may be. So there are two sets of motions, and there's a lot of things that you can consider with each one of those. However, Robert's Rules of Orders clearly set out how to deal with those. Could you put up slide number 4? This is a table that's employed along with the rules themselves. If you look at the columns, the first column is the paragraph, the interpretation. Then it talks about the particular motion, talks about how to entertain the motion, whether or not there can or should be a second, and how the motion is to be voted upon by the council. So there's a clearly defined path for each one of these types of motions. You could have this table with you on the dais when you're considering motions, and you can look at it and say, oh, okay, now I understand what's going on. It also dictates when a motion should be seconded. In most cases, with main motions, the motion itself should be seconded. And the reason is to make sure that there is sufficient backing for a motion in order to carry it on to debate. And I want to get to that point in a minute. The one thing that the table and the rules provide for, it eliminates guessing upon how you conduct and how you entertain a motion. Obviously, you can get in summary form, and you have the paragraphs if you want to go back and address a rule of order. You know, what do we do with respect to this particular motion under these circumstances? Put up slide 4. There was some confusion about whether or not council should undertake a motion without a second. And I think some of the interpretation is based upon a resolution that was adopted by council in July of 2019. At that time, the council entertained a resolution to discuss matters that were before the council, but that were not yet being asked to be moved upon, or there was a motion. You can do that anytime you want to. You don't have to have a second to discuss something. Tonight's agenda was a classic example. We spent a significant amount of time and had a wonderful presentation on our Parks and Recreation, major plan. And there was a good discussion. There was a good presentation. Council had an opportunity to ask questions and certainly had an opportunity to vet that entire, topic. There was not a motion, it was not an action item to be taken. Personally, I think that the resolution that was passed back in 2019 is probably superfluous. That's contained in Robert's rules. Council always has right to consider or to discuss something. If for some reason you want to take action on that, then you would ask for, somebody would bring a motion, and then that should be seconded. If it's not seconded, it would fail by want of a second. That's the procedure under Robert's rules. It's also the procedure under the Washington State rules as well, too. So do not confuse the fact that you can have a discussion on a matter with the necessity to have a second on a motion. Two different things. You can always discuss the business and affairs of the city of Sandpoint. If you're gonna take action, then you need to have the second. Last slide. We've also provided a proposed ordinance. I would recommend that we adopt Robert's rules, the most recent edition, and we don't have to worry about going back if there's a 13th edition, and use those as the official parliamentary rules of procedure for meetings of the Sandpoint City Council and other commissions. I think it would also be prudent for, at some point in time, it's not that much of a cost, to have the tables, available to council. There's also brief forms of the rules. You don't have to sit there and read the whole book. You can look at, the brief summary of the rules. If there's a question about, what or how rules are to be interpreted, Madam Clerk will certainly have a copy of the most recent edition in her office, and we can make it available for council. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks, Andy. Any questions?
No, I just have a comment. I am a Robert's Rules nerd. I love them. I teach nonprofit leadership, and I tell them that they should always go by Robert's Rules. And I have the brief book.
Yeah,
So I'm a huge proponent of Robert's Rules.
Okay, so we'll mark you down as a yes.
Yes, please.
Any other questions or comments? So, excuse me.
So would you say a lot of the, sorry, Mr. Mayor, a lot of the confusion came from that resolution? Because I remember that meeting, it was a Tilburg meeting, and people were like really concerned, like we're taking away some freedoms. And so I think that brought up a lot of the confusion that myself included have been a little confused. It almost felt like we couldn't discuss anything prior to a second.
Right. And I think the distinction is, if you're going to take action on an item, in fact, Idaho's open meeting laws provide that we have to put on our agenda whether or not we're going to take action on something. That does not take away from council the right to discuss a matter that's before you. In this case tonight, the Parks and Recreation, plan was before you. We had a very good, discussion about that. You always have the right to do that. In fact, tonight's agenda was a kind of a lesson, shorthand version of how Robert's rules are employed. We had a motion to take the budget ordinance back off the table, put it back before the council. We had a motion to read the ordinance by title only. We had another motion to suspend the second and third readings, and then a final vote on the motion. All of those were made, seconded, and adopted by the council pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order. So you had a small lesson tonight in how to employ it, and I think we passed wonderfully.
Okay. I think I just, maybe some more clarity with Councilman Espiro's question though, is that if we had an action item before the council, let's say, approve the foregone, right? And there was a motion, there wasn't a second, we could still discuss the matter, even though there's no second.
Not under Robert's Rules of Procedure. If you're going to discuss a matter, you can always discuss a matter. If it's an action item, you need a motion and a second.
Okay.
No matter what.
Yeah.
So it has to go to vote, period.
Yes. But you always have the right to discuss something.
Correct. Before and after.
Yes, where does the discussion part of it?
We do put items on our agenda that are potential action items, so they'll be labeled as an action item, but they are not necessarily just to cover because it potentially.
Yeah, I stand corrected, and I agree with Jennifer. We may have a discussion about something that ultimately may lead to a motion, and we often have a potential motion on our agenda to take that into consideration. So in that case, if you have a discussion leads into a motion, then you would need a second after that. Does that clarify?
Yeah, and I think maybe I'm confusing two things. It almost seems redundant, and this is why I'm a little confused, is we'll have a discussion, there's a second, and then they'll be asked, is there any more discussion? So I guess it almost seems redundant. What is the proper procedure there? If we have discussion, then there's a second, and then we have more discussion.
You can, like I said, you can always discuss something. If you're going to have a motion, you should have a motion and it should be seconded, and then you have the discussion after the second.
Even if there's a discussion prior to the
it's not an action item at that point in time.
Okay. That helps a lot, so thank you.
It's a good thing you're here to hold our hands for us.
We're going to get everybody a table.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. So I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr.
That the
Mayor,
rules requiring, wait, I'm sorry, what? Is there someone who would like to speak on this topic?
no, but we'll need to read the title of the ordinance
Okay,
first.
thank you.
Into the record.
Yes, an ordinance of the City of Sandpoint, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Chapter 5 of Title 1, Sandpoint City Code pertaining to meeting rules of order and procedure, providing that this provision shall be deemed severable and that remaining sections of Sandpoint City Code shall not be affected by a finding that these provisions are unlawful or unenforceable, and providing for publication and an effective date. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mayor,
I'm sorry, I would entertain a motion that the ordinance pass its first reading by title only and the summary is approved.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved.
Final answer.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Espero,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilman Darlene,
Yes.
Councilman Grote,
Yes.
The ordinance passed its first reading by title only and the summary is approved. I would entertain a motion that the rules requiring 3 separate readings, once in the ordinance's entirety, be suspended and the ordinance pass its second and third readings under suspension of the rules. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilman Espero,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson,
Yes.
Councilman Grote,
Yes.
Councilman Darlene,
Yes.
Motion passes. This ordinance is considered read, passed, and adopted under suspension of the rules, and this meeting is adjourned at 7:35.